At least 30 civil society organizations are asking President Bola Tinubu to declare a blueprint for an anti-graft war after 3 weeks in office. The CSOs, including the Zero Corruption Coalition, the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, the Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, CERAP, the Center for Democracy and Development, CDD, among others, made the call at a press conference in Abuja.
That's right, and CISLAC Executive Director Auwal Rafsanjani, who spoke on behalf of the other CSOs, argued that the Buhari administration left so many lapses unattended, which resulted in the failure of the adoption of the legal framework and the National Anti-Corruption Strategy adopted in 2018 to help tackle corruption. The CSOs in their recommendations are calling for the passage and assent to the Whistleblowers Bill, reformation of the Federal Ministry of Justice, and more citizens' inclusion in the fight against corruption.
The issue of corruption or fighting corruption is not one of the major cardinal agenda of the administration. And given the consequences of corruption that has undermined development, that undermine value system, that undermine integrity, that completely isolate us from the international community as a responsible nation, we in civil society organization, we have the responsibility to ensure that corruption and corrupt people do not have their way in this country.
Well, Auwal Rafsanjani, the Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC, is here in the studio to shed more light on the demands by the CSOs on corruption. Thank you so much for joining us, Auwal.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Now, let's start this way. The President has been shaking the system since he assumed office. But why do you reckon he's not prioritizing the fight against corruption?
Well, his inability to, 3 weeks after being in office, to make clear commitment on the fight against corruption for his administration is a huge concern to us, because we know that political corruption is one of the major problems that we have in this country, where corrupt people are, regrouping now, going to procure, court order to prevent even anti-corruption from even inviting them or investigating them. At the end of the day, they are also lobbying to be appointed. We cannot have this cycle of vicious leaders who have looted this country, who have destroyed the value of this country, to only come back and now have another appointment. We believe that the Tinubu administration must do everything possible to make anti-corruption as a major cardinal focus for governance of this country, because of the huge repercussion that corruption has done to us at local, state, and national level, and within all the tiers of government, whether it is executive or legislature or even judiciary. That is why it is important that Bola Tinubu administration must come out clear to distance himself and his government from associating with looters.
Like who and who do you have in mind?
Well, anybody that has been, fingered and been, information and evidence are gathered against him.
There's no point hiding behind a finger. Who and who do you suggest that the President should distance himself from?
There are a number of individuals, both at the state and national level, that the President must distance himself. I will point out that there are a number of governors, ex-governors, who EFCC, as I speak to you, are inviting them or investigating them. Those people clearly have issue, and therefore they must not be given appointment, because at least for morality's sake, let them be cleared, from any accusation or for any allegation before you now give them appointment. That's number one. Number two, there are a number of ministers who have helped loot this country, and they are now regrouping and coming to get, political appointment again. Thirdly, people are buying this position. And that is one of the most terrible things that, political corruption has done to this country. People are not being appointed on the basis of purely on merit, but on the basis of consideration of what they can bring to purchase those positions. Just like many of them purchased the election that brought them to power. Right. So we cannot sustain political corruption. We cannot maintain the electoral fraud that has produced crooks and criminals as leaders. They will not be able to do any governance. What they will be doing is to see how they can institutionalize looting the nation. And Bola and Ahmed Tinubu must make sure that his government is distancing itself from that. Otherwise, the stain, will be on his government and on himself. Already he's battling.
Let me butt in here, if you'd allow me. I mean, you've made very great points there, but from what you're saying, you seem to be focusing more on political corruption, and at that stage, really, one would say that the genie is already out of the bottle. I mean, some would say, look, the best approach to fighting corruption would be in an organic manner, which Bola Tinubu, as the presidential candidate, actually pointed out. He said, look, my approach to fighting corruption would not be the same old. If you provide those basic things, I mean, housing, mortgage, for example, and all of that, it will naturally, reduce the tendency to want to be corrupt if you were in, public office and all of that. What exactly are you recommending? Let's even talk about your recommendations. What are you saying that Bola Tinubu should put in place to fight this political corruption that you talk about?
I think it is important that we understand that there are, global frameworks and even national frameworks that we have to reduce corruption. Everybody knows that procurement contract is one of the major areas that public officials are using to loot this country. So if Tinubu cannot do anything to ensure that public procurement law are complied with, the council itself is being inaugurated, then we will be doing window dressing. Secondly, if Bola Tinubu administration will not look at reforming the key institutions, that is aiding corruption in this country, like the Federal Inland Revenue, like the NIMASA, like the Nigerian Port Authority, like the CBN, if you cannot do any reform in those areas, then it will be difficult for you to deal with the corruption that we are talking about.
Okay, again, you also spoke, because we went through your release, you also have this notion about the whistleblower and the whistleblower bill and all.
And the witness protection bill.
Yes. So now, but you seem to be so big on the idea of a whistleblower in Nigeria. Are there no other means of exposing corrupt people and corruption?
Why we are insisting on having a legal framework on the whistleblowing protection, is simply because we need to protect Nigerians who volunteer to expose corruption and corrupt people. We have had instances where a lot of Nigerians got killed, got sacked from job, and there's no any protection for them. So that is why we have been advocating, even during Buhari administration, that they say they want to fight corruption. We say, look, you cannot say you want to fight corruption without having enabling legal framework that will protect those people who volunteer to expose corrupt people. They didn't bother to listen to us. Now, if Tinubu say, well, he has a systematic way of fighting corruption, let it show that we need to have those legal framework that we have them currently, like even the Code of Conduct Bureau need to be properly, reformed and make it to, function. EFCC, ICPC, all of them, they need to be given the autonomy. They need to be given the free hand. They need to remove the political control and manipulation on these agencies so that they can be able to investigate people who are actually destroying this country. But if you are using your power to simply because the EFCC want to investigate some high-profile, politically exposed, corrupt person in Nigeria, and then you use that to send, the leadership away, I think you are doing incredible damage to the image of the country and to even the people. So we have to get Tinubu to understand that we cannot do window dressing and claim that we are going to do fight against corruption. We must use global and national instruments that can enable Nigerians to fight corruption. And one of it is to use the National Strategic Action Against Corruption, which will include everyone to play a role to minimize corruption in Nigeria. And quite a number of other instruments, even the reforms in the security sector, where you know that a lot of corruption has been there. Procurement in this defense and security is a huge issue. Issues around, empowering the Auditor General Office to be able to do its work is one of the key things that we are looking forward to seeing, Tinubu administration. Look, we have a serious image problem in this country because service delivery, everything you have to pay. You want a passport, you have to pay. You want admission, you have to pay bribe. You want anything you are looking for that ordinarily is supposed to be given to the citizens, you have to pay. And if you don't have the money, you will be forced to be roaming around on the street.
In other words, that sounds like, look, the fight against corruption really has to start with the people themselves. We'll have to leave it there. Auwal Rafsanjani, Executive Director, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAG. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very
on
much.
Newsnight tonight.
Thank you for your insight.